a proposito di programma, a tutti si parlava di queste gare, queste gare sono orari, tutto, poi vogliono anche i sconti, si fa, insomma, arrivavano tutti i spettatori, queste 7 monache, il capo di 16.
Round number 6 of the 2020 International GTOpen Championship comes to you from the rolling hills of Austria and the Red Bull Ring circuit. 4.3 kilometres of high-speed, undulating, challenging racetrack lies ahead of the drivers, and 60 minutes of racing here in race number 2, with the usual mandatory driver change in the middle of the race. This race may be 10 minutes shorter than yesterday's race, but it should pack just as much action into it. Track temperature is creeping up and up and up as the day goes on. Not quite as warm as yesterday afternoon, but still plenty warm enough as the sun beats down on this abrasive racetrack. It's a real tyre killer. It produces great racing, and it did in bucket loads yesterday. Hoping for more of the same now in this 6th round of the championship. And to be queuing up here in the commentary box. I'll be joined by Elliot Wood in a little while as well, and we're looking forward to seeing just what happens in this race, because qualifying earlier on quite literally could not have been much closer. It was one of the closest qualifying sessions in the history of the championship, and it was the TF Sport Aston Martin Vantage GT3 driven by Charlie Eastwood that took the pole position by 3/1000ths of a second. That then is the car that will start on pole position, and they took a much needed pole position there, really, you'd have to say, because they haven't had a great weekend so far, only managing 9th place in yesterday's first race, but championship contenders most definitely 3rd place in the points. Alongside them will be the 59 Aston Martin Motorsport McLaren, started by Enrique Chavez, 3rd for JP Motorsports Mercedes, and the Ferrari you just saw there, number 17, started by Vincent Abril, will start 4th on the grid. Joe Osborne is piloting the Optimum Motorsport number 72 McLaren. He will start 5th on the grid, and 6th place will be Ram Racing. Whilst in the AM category, it was all very, very tight indeed. It was Alexei Nassov, though, who took pole position for AKM Motorsport in the AM class, 7th place overall, which was a really, really spectacular effort from him to put that car right in the thick of some of the Pro-Am entries. 3 different classes of car then, if you're new, or 3 different classes of driver, I should say, if you're new to GTOpen. The cars are all GC3 spec cars, but we have a Pro class, which is, well, kind of as you might expect, for pro drivers, so 2 fully fledged professional drivers piloting the car. We have 4 of those entered in the race today. There are 6 Pro-Am cars, which is something that we're familiar to seeing in the UK, for example, where there is 1 pro driver, 1 amateur driver, and they share the driving duties. And then we have a dedicated AM class just for amateur drivers. And in that class, we have the 1 solo-driven car, the Porsche of Nicky Luttweiler, who's had a bit of a difficult weekend so far. Across all 3 classes, you get great competition. Of course, you also get this mixing of the classes, because the Pro-Am cars are more than capable of competing for outright honours, at least when the Pro is in the car, but then they sometimes struggle a bit when the AM driver gets behind the wheel. So it is the Pro cars that are doing the best in the championship right now. The top 3 cars in the points are all Pro entries, and it is Aston Martin who have the championship lead, the McLaren of Miguel Ramos and Enrique Chavez, on 57 points. They're now 11 points clear after winning yesterday's race. It was a fantastic victory from 9th on the grid. The race was started by Miguel Ramos and he came carving through into the top 5, and then they were able to, in the hands of Enrique Chavez for the second half of the race, really pick themselves even further up the field. They came out of the pit lane in about 4th place, worked their way into 2nd on the road. The race was actually won on the road by the brand new KTM Crossbow GTX concept run by Reiter Engineering, Patrick Niederhauser and Stefan Rossina, who won the race from 3rd on the grid, but post-race disqualification for, quote, non-compliance of brake disc size means that they not only were disqualified from the race, but they've also been hit with 50 kilos into the car today. So the car is 50 kilos heavier for race 2 than it was for race 1, which possibly explains why they struggled a bit in qualifying earlier on this morning. And so the KTM, which had what looked to be a dream debut, winning at its home track, sadly the dream has been shattered rather by that post-race penalty. There's your front row then, a very good-looking front row it is as well. Aston Martin and McLaren make up the top 2 positions. Enrique Chavez will take the start this time. Whichever driver started yesterday's race has to take the second stint in this one. And in the 2 qualifying sessions, one yesterday and one today, each driver has to complete one of those sessions apiece. Christian Klein will start the JP Motorsport Mercedes that won the first race of the season back at the Hungaroring, and the number 88 car looking to try and at the very least take a Pro-Am category victory here today if they can. And Vincent Abril will pedal the AF Corse APM Monaco Ferrari, which sits second in the championship on 46 points, 11 off the lead and just 4 points ahead of the TF Sport Aston Martin. So the top 3 are all together at the front of the grid, basically, with Christian Klein, the interloper. Joe Osborne starts from 5th, and then Nick Moss, his AM teammate, will take over at the pit stops, and then alongside him, the Ram Racing car that got on the podium in their first visit to the championship yesterday. They finished 4th on the road. They inherited 3rd place after the disqualification for the KTM. And the Sam Dehan and Callum McLeod driven car that will be started by McLeod today starts from 6th on the grid. Then it is the AM pole sitter, Alexei Nesov, the number 13 of the AKM Motorsport Mercedes. And Nesov, who partners that car with Alexander Moisev, have a best finish this year of 8th. So if they can hang on to their starting position, they should better that. Marcello Ham will start the 16 Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. Now that is a Pro-Am car, unlike the sister car that starts on the front row, so expect that car to fly when Fran Rueda gets back into the car. 8 times a race winner in the championship is Fran Rueda, making a welcome return this weekend. Well, here are the highlights of yesterday's opening race then, and at the start it was the McLaren number 16 of Fran Rueda that had the early lead, whilst the teammate car of Miguel Ramos was having a bit of a banging match with Stefan Ortelli in the Ferrari, as they both tried to make up for lowly grid positions, with Sally Yolok in the hunt as well. In the red Aston Martin, there was contact between the JP Motorsport Mercedes and the Porsche of Nicky Luttweiler about midway through the race, which put the Porsche in the gravel and brought out the safety car. The race got back underway, and very quickly after that we went into the pit stop window, but not before the Ram Racing McLaren and Mercedes had been overtaken by the 59 McLaren, which then set about overtaking its teammate after the pit stops. Enrique Chavez was on an absolute mission and worked his way into 2nd place on the road. The KTM of Patrick Niederhauser and Stefan Rossina came through to win the race, but that post-race disqualification meant it was the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren that actually inherited the race victory. It didn't matter for the championship standings in the end, though, because the KTM is not eligible for points. So regardless of what the actual order was on the road, it was the 59 car that took the maximum points, took their first victory of the year, though, after the KTM was taken out of the results. It's been a fantastic season for the 59 car. Miguel and Enrique have only been off the podium once all year in the 5 races we've had so far. So, race number 2 at the Red Bull Ring for the International GT Open, and the grid looks like this. It is Charlie Eastwood who will start the TF Sport Aston Martin from pole position. They need to try and bounce back from yesterday's disappointing 9th place finish. Enrique Chavez starts for Teo Martin Motorsport in the McLaren alongside. It's 4 different manufacturers represented in the top 4 because Christian Klein drives the JP Motorsport Mercedes from 3rd, and Vincent Abril for AF Corsa is in his Ferrari, lining up 4th on the grid. Joe Osborne in the McLaren is 5th, with Callum McLeod alongside in the Ram Racing Mercedes, 2 British GT regular team and drivers there, with Alexei Nassov, the AM pole sitter, 7th overall, and Marcello Hahn in the 2nd of the Teo Martin Motorsport McLarens, rounding out the top 8. The top 10 is finished with Jens Liebhauser and Patrick Niederhauser, the 2 drivers there together. The KTM now 50 kilos heavier than yesterday, which is why it's struggling a bit more for pace. Manuel Lauk is in the AM Mercedes, and Brendan Iribe in the 2nd of the Optimum Motorsport McLarens will hand over to Ollie Milroy at the pit stops. Angelo Negro in the 2nd AF Corsa car has Nicky Luttweiler's Porsche alongside him on the back row of the grid as the green flag flies and the formation lap gets underway here at the Red Bull Ring. Cars make a beautiful sight and sound. One of the great things about GT3 racing is the fantastic variety you get on the grid. 8 different makes of car represented here on this grid, and half of those makes have managed to get themselves onto the front couple of rows of the grid. All of the cars look different, they sound different, they are all designed differently as well. We were talking a lot yesterday about the various strengths and weaknesses of front-engine, mid-engine, or even rear-engine cars. And again, great variety of the front-engine Mercedes and Aston Martins, the mid-engined McLarens and Ferraris, the rear-engine Porsche, of course, of Nicky Luttweiler coming from the back, and they all have different areas where they excel. That is what promotes some of the fantastic racing that we regularly see in International GT Open. So, getting ready then for the start, and Charlie Eastwood leads the field around the tricky double apex, or 2 left-handers really, at turns 6 and 7. Where we had quite a bit of action yesterday, actually. It's not a corner where you would imagine you get too much going on, but we had the contact between Ramos and Ortelli, then the contact between the JP Motorsport Mercedes and Nicky Luttweiler's Porsche. Quite a lot of action there, and Joe Osborne also managed to make some nice overtakes at that particular part of the track too, including on his teammate Brendan Iribe. So 2 by 2 then, up the hill towards the end of the lap, round number 6 of the International GT Open. Red Bull Ring Circuit has already given us one great race. This one 10 minutes shorter than yesterday, so 60 minutes is the distance. And the Teo Martin squad watching on. Miguel Ramos will take over that 59 car, he hopes, from a strong position. If they can have another good result here, they are on for an even bigger championship lead heading into the second half of the year. After this race, we will be halfway through the 2020 championship with only 6 races to go. So this is pivotal. Whoever comes out of the Red Bull Ring on top will have a good advantage going into the second half of the year. Will it be a McLaren? Will it be an Aston Martin? Will it be a Ferrari? Well, we'll find out in 60 minutes time, because round number 6 of the championship is about to get underway. The cars are side by side coming to the start-finish line. Charlie Eastwood in the Aston Martin has pole position. Alongside him, Enrique Chavez in the McLaren. Away they go. A good start made is made by Marcello Hahn from the 4th row of the grid, and he is steaming down the outside of everybody in towards turn number 1. It's dead level for the lead. Eastwood on the inside. Chavez goes right round the outside in the McLaren. Out over the curb he goes. Gets good traction coming off the corner, but he was very much off the racing surface when he made that overtake. We'll have to see how that one pans out. The McLaren then takes the lead up the hill. Charlie Eastwood in 2nd will not be particularly happy about that. Christian Klein is side by side with Vincent Abril for 4th, and we ride on board briefly there with Joe Osborne, who tries to stick the green McLaren up the inside of the Ferrari. Succeeds in doing so, but I think Abril will have better traction off the corner and should hang on to the place. So Enrique Chavez leads then for Teo Martin Motorsport down into turn number 4 for the first time. Battling on behind him though, Abril goes to the outside of Christian Klein, tries to sail right round the outside in the Ferrari. That leaves the door wide open for Joe Osborne, who goes from 5th to 4th and maybe 3rd. He's alongside Christian Klein, who squeezes the McLaren onto the grass. There's contact between the 2 of them. The Mercedes stays in front, and Joe Osborne will be spitting feathers underneath his helmet in that 72 McLaren. He was clearly alongside, and the Mercedes simply closed the door in his face. Well, a dramatic opening half a lap or so. Enrique Chavez is already starting to get away. Elliot Wood alongside me in the commentary box. What did you think? First of all, let's talk about that first corner, because Chavez went right round the outside of Eastwood, but he, in my view, completed the overtake off the racetrack. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he started that overtake behind and off track, and he finished it off track as well. So entirely not legal at all. Problem is, he couldn't really give the position back because he more likely would have lost several positions at once. But now he's got such a substantial margin that inevitably he's going to be under investigation for a penalty.
Yeah, the start is under investigation already, we're being told by race control, so we'll see if anything comes of that. It might not be that particular incident that they're looking at, but they will investigate the whole start procedure, no doubt. Joe Osborne then will be more determined than ever now to get past Christian Klein in the Mercedes after that little bit of argy-bargy between the two of them, and Osborne's up the inside. There's almost contact as they go into turn number 3. He did not make the move work in the end, but that could so easily have ended in contact. There is the car that won on the road yesterday, the KTM of Patrick Niederhauser, who is still in 8th position at the moment as they crest the hill, trying to find a way past Marcello Hahn, though, and he's done it. And Hahn is now under attack from Alexei Nesov, who elbows his way up the inside, goes through. That's also going to allow Manuel Lauk through, and that is for the AM class lead. The McLaren and the Mercedes leaning on each other through turn number 5. Will the McLaren hang on to the class lead? Sorry, the McLaren, yes, is a Pro-Am car, separating the top 2 AM cars. So, yeah, the position stays as it was. We saw on the top of the screen there, though, that car 59, Enrique Chavez, must give the race lead back to Charlie Eastwood. So the race officials agree with us. That move was made off the track, and he has to let Charlie Eastwood back through. That's fair enough, though, I think, Elliot. They aren't unreasonable. They know that he couldn't give it back straight away. No need to give him a drive-through or anything as long as he reverses that position on track.
Yeah, and the earlier they can get this decision made, which they have done within 2 laps, the better it is for everyone involved.
Yeah, it looks like he's doing it now into turn 1. Look, Eastwood's on the inside. They almost touched, actually, as they went into turn 1. So, Charlie Eastwood gets himself back into the lead of the race now then for TF Sport. The TF Sport car, which is some 15 points behind the 59 car in the championship. But Chavez is now trying to fight back for the race lead into the braking zone at turn number 3. He sails into the corner. He can't stop for the corner, though. Runs very wide again. And this might cost him second place to Christian Klein. No, he gets back on the road in front of the Mercedes. Enrique Chavez then is playing fast and loose with the track limits rules today, because look at the run that got him off the corner, and he's now forcing Eastwood to defend again into turn number 4. Eastwood holds his ground, stops the car nicely on the apex. Can Chavez get up the inside on the exit though? Yes, he can. Side by side into turn number 5. Enrique Chavez trying to get the lead away. The car that won yesterday's race has its nose back in front, but the next corner's a left-hander. Eastwood has the inside line. Chavez is on the dirty side of the road, and the Aston Martin will go back through. Where is Christian Klein? He's not quite close enough to get through, but this is terrific racing here in the early stages. Chavez looks a bit quicker than Eastwood, but Eastwood is defending magnificently and keeping the chasing pack behind him. Over the hill then, towards the end of lap number 3 of the race, and Charlie Eastwood is still in front then. Chavez second, Klein third, Osborne fourth, Vincent Abril fifth, and Callum McLeod is sixth. They are all pro drivers, so too is Patrick Niederhauser in 7th. So the highest placed AM driver is Alexei Nesov in the Mercedes, which is actually going with Niederhauser in the white and blue KTM. 6 cars, though, fighting for the lead as they turn into turn number 1, and Callum McLeod, the 6th car in this group, has just set the fastest lap of the race. The black and pink Mercedes, 1 minute 30.546, is gaining on the cars in front because they're all tripping over each other as they fight for the lead positions. Up the hill again, Eastwood far enough in front of Chavez to not have to defend this time into turn number 3. Those McLarens are very, very good on the brakes. We've seen them making some good moves into the tight corners already this weekend. I think before long, Niederhauser's going to catch them. This is how the lead changed. So Chavez let Eastwood go, but then, oh yeah, Eastwood, just as he turned into take the normal racing line, almost leaned on the McLaren there. Niederhauser and Nesov are definitely with this pack now, so it's almost 8 cars for the lead. That's over half the field altogether, and I can't say enough here about Alexei Nesov. That white and green Mercedes at the back of the group is the leading AM car. He's the only AM driver in this lead pack, and Elliot, he's doing a fantastic job to stay with them, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's actually lapping about 6 tenths faster than our lead 2, who are constantly in battle now. But like you said, Nesov's also in battle, so there's no reason why he should be that quick. Having to defend that penultimate corner there is Charlie Eastwood. Now, I think defending, well, I was going to say it should help with track limits, but both of them clearly went over there going to the final corner. That'll be the first time they've done it, and we have a number of warnings before they can get a penalty for doing that. So very interested to see if those kind of actions continue. We see several other cars do the same thing behind.
Yeah, don't forget we saw a few time penalties yesterday, not only for track limits, but also for pit lane entries. And and the Aston Martin was one of those cars that was given a time penalty at the end of the race that did cost it a few positions. They finished about 6th on the road, but 9th on corrected times in the end. Enrique Chavez continuing to apply the pressure then to Charlie Eastwood in the TF Sport Aston Martin. TF Sport have been running that new generation Aston Martin for a couple of years now around the world, and they're definitely getting on top of it, but we made the point a few times this weekend, it's the only Aston Martin in the field in GTOpen this year, so they have no teammates to work with, no teammate data to go off at all. They're having to do this all on their own, and in a way that makes it all the more impressive that they are up there in the championship fight and leading the race. They have a race win to their credit this year, the first race at Paul Ricard. In fact, Paul Ricard was by far the best weekend so far for TF Sport, with a win in race 1 and a third in race 2, and Enrique Chavez gets a wheel in the dirt there going out of turn number 6. Despite the fact they're battling though, those two are getting away now slightly from Christian Klein and Joe Osborne, who are fighting over 3rd and 4th themselves. So you've got 2 for the lead, and then everyone else fighting over 3rd place. Chavez once more forces Eastwood to defend into the penultimate turn. So they run wide this time. Eastwood almost does, but I think he was just about within the lines. As long as any one wheel is either within the white line or at least on a red and white painted curb, you should be okay. The Aston Martin rumbles below us in the commentary box here across the start-finish line into turn number 1. And Enrique Chavez again closes on the brakes, but the Aston seems to have the grunt in a straight line. This is what I was saying before the race. Each car makes its speed in slightly different ways, and that is what creates a bit of ebbing and flowing when it comes to the gaps. Although Chavez is closer this time into turn 3, thinks about going to the inside, but Eastwood saw it coming, defended the inside line. But the tight line in sometimes means a slower line out, and the McLaren is alongside again. Enrique Chavez challenging for the race lead once more on the run between turns 3 and 4. I think he's going to do it this time. The McLaren is every bit as quick as the Aston Martin actually down the hill, and it's got the inside for turn 4. Can Eastwood get the switch back though? That's what he's going to try and do. It's so hard to hold the apex there, but Chavez manages it, and the McLaren is back ahead. The saving grace here for Eastwood and the TF squad is that because the McLaren won the race yesterday, it will have a bigger handicap into this race. The Aston Martin shouldn't have a handicap at all because it was off the podium. So Enrique Chavez may have got the race lead, but now he really needs to try and pull away, doesn't he?
Yeah, and we did see that on the opening lap. He pulled out 1.4 seconds before he was asked to hand the position back. So if he can do that again, and we're going to see them going through the final 2 corners, already put maybe 1 or 2 car lengths between himself and Charlie Eastwood there. So Chavez knows exactly what he needs to do, and he also knows what happened in the first race yesterday and how strong that Aston Martin McLaren was. And we'll see a replay of the move pretty much alongside from the start of the straight, all done under braking. Yeah,
he set that up going into turn 3, or really out of turn 1. He got a good run out of turn 1. That meant he was closer into turn 3 than he had been on previous laps, and so Eastwood had to defend. And once Eastwood started defending, that was it. He was always likely to run wide coming off the corner. And indeed he did. So Enrique Chavez then gets the race lead away. 2nd place for Charlie Eastwood, 3rd Christian Klein, 4th place for Joe Osborne. Vincent Abril is 5th, Callum McLeod 6th, Patrick Niederhauser 7th, and Alexei Nassov is 8th. Then there's a bit of a gap back to Marcello Han in 9th, and 10th place for Manuel Lau, who is the 2nd of the AM drivers. Then it's Liebhauser, Brendan Iribe, Nicky Luttweiler and Angelo Negro. Replay of the start. And you can see Marcello Han there on the left-hand side of the road. The blue McLaren got an absolute flyer, pulled himself alongside Callum McLeod and Patrick Niederhauser. But then he was on the outside line going into turn number 1. This is on board with McLeod. Keep an eye to the left because here comes the McLaren. Almost on the grass as it goes down the left-hand side of the road, and then McLeod kind of finds himself getting boxed in behind Joe Osborne, actually. Is there a bit of contact? Ooh, almost going into the first corner, but it's very easy to just make a little bit of casual contact through there. At the front of the field, Eastwood got away well and had the advantage into the first corner, but then Enrique Chavez sailed around the outside. Look at that, but he was off the road when he actually made the move stick, and then there was a bit of contact there between Christian Klein and Vincent Abril, and this is what gave Osborne the run, and he went from 5th and almost into 3rd, but there was very much some contact there between the two of them, and I wonder whether maybe the Optimum Motorsport squad might have something to say about that. There was the contact. Look, it put Abril wide going into turn 4, and Osborne took advantage, and well, all 4 wheels on the grass there really, as he tried to muscle his way past the Mercedes, but it didn't quite work out. He had to settle in line in 4th place. So back to the live pictures now then, and you can can see the lead gap that Enrique Chavez is building now. The fight that's developing nicely is the one for 4th place, as Joe Osborne is coming back under a renewed attack now from Vincent Abril, who got past on the first lap of the race. Already Callum McLeod in the 69 Mercedes just behind them is being warned about track limits at turns 9 and 10. So the Mercedes driver pretty early to be being given those kind of warnings. There is the AF Corsa APM Monaco squad pushing on nervously. That was Louis Pret, I believe, who will take over from Vincent Abril. This car second in the championship with 2 wins to their credit. They're the only team with more than 1 win so far this year. 5 races, 4 different winners, 4 different manufacturers as well. Ferrari, although it has more wins than anybody else, it's been the McLaren of Ramos and Chavez that's had that ultra consistent pace, really. But Louis Pret and Vincent Abril, they had a solid run yesterday to 4th. Not quite able to get on the podium. They're really suffering from a non-finish that they had at the Hungaroring. The first round of the year, the number 17 Ferrari did not finish, and so they didn't score any points, and that's why, I mean, if they hadn't had that non-finish, they would have been right up there with Ramos and Chavez in the championship standings. So now they are really on the back foot. They can't afford another non-finish, that's for sure, to make sure that they are scoring good points as often as they possibly can. So down into the braking zone at turn 4 goes the Optimum Motorsport McLaren. Joe Osborne feeling the heat here from Vincent Abril. Abril will be a bit frustrated, I think, to be behind the McLaren. He was attacking Christian Klein for 3rd there at the start, and Joe Osborne took advantage of them delaying each other. Now the McLaren just falling back a little bit. Callum McLeod not quite able to live with them, and Patrick Niederhauser really feeling that extra weight now, and they'll presumably have had to have changed the brake discs as well, that were the wrong size for yesterday's race. Brand new car, of course, that KTM, so everyone's learning about it. The BOP perhaps needs further adjustment, because there wasn't really any reference point to start from with the KTM Crossbow. Definitely not got the speed today. Well, things calming down a little bit more now. This is what we tend to see when you've got a bunch of the pro drivers in the cars at the start of the race, which is what we've got now. They're all pretty evenly matched with each other, and Enrique Chavez starting to stamp his authority on this one now.
Yeah, and the car that led for so much yesterday is down in 9th place. The Marcelo Hahn Martin McLaren. He's actually acting as a roadblock for the AM-class battle, because we have Alexei Nezov ahead of him, and Manuel Luck and Jens Lieberhauser who are behind, and pretty desperate to have a crack at the class lead, but you know, they've got Marcelo Hahn in the way.
Yeah, Hahn is in a Pro-Am McLaren, so although he is an AM driver, he's not really in the same class as the AM teams, because he'll hand over to very quick pro Fran Rueda at the pit stops. Their teammate car, though, is out in front again, and it's got a real championship feel about it, hasn't it, the campaign for that 59 car so far this year. Just so consistent, relentlessly putting in the podium results, and that means that they always have a handicap, basically. As long as you're finishing on the podium, you will carry a handicap over into the next race, and it can go to a maximum of 30 seconds. So they are doing particularly well, actually, to be able to still be scoring podium results despite that handicap. Yellow car on your screen then, number 44, that is Jens Liebhauser, is already on a last warning for track limits at turns 1, 9 and 10. We're only just 15 minutes into this race. Surely they're not going to get to the end of the race without picking up a penalty in that race.
Well, I think what we saw yesterday was a lot of the pro drivers went first, then the AM drivers in the car second, so pro drivers clocked up less track limits warnings, but the penalties are awarded once the AM drivers in the car as they continued to rack up track limits offences. So now we've got the AM drivers in first, and they're pretty racy from the off. The car's got the ability to lean on the tyres, etc. Then, yeah, they're more likely to get them. Looks like Marcelo Hahn ahead of them might also get a final warning soon, because he's had several flashing things saying warning, flag car 16, which is him. And I think the next one after that is last warning.
Yes, and then they start adding time onto your race. Alexei Nezov here challenging the KTM. Keep labouring this point about how Nezov is an AM driver, and he's racing against some of the pros now, and admittedly that KTM is a bit slower today than it was yesterday, but this is still not a battle probably that Alexei expected to be having. He'll hand that car over at the pit stops, the 13 machine, to Alexander Moisev, and the two of them have been doing reasonably well in the AM Championship so far this year. And in the AM category, it is Florian Scholz and Jens Liebhauser who have the points lead, but Moisev and Nasov are second, but only 6 points behind. So important for them to try and notch up this race victory if they can. More cars being warned about track limits. Car 24 is Patrick Niederhauser for KTM, and car 7 is Brendan Irib in the number 7 Optimum Motorsport McLaren. Turns 1 and 9 for the KTM, turns 9 and 10 for the McLaren. It's the KTM that's feeling the heat here from the Mercedes of Alexei Nesov. The AKM Motorsport Mercedes heads out of turn 1 quite sideways there, took a wide line in and then really gassed up the big heavy front engine Mercedes all the way over the front of that car. Of course, it's got good front end grip through the high speed corners, but it can get a bit tail happy out of the tight turns. Looks quicker here, doesn't he, than Niederhauser?
Yeah, I'm wondering because obviously it was a brake-related issue, and maybe finding different size brakes isn't very easy to do at 11:30 at night, which is when they made the announcement after disqualification. So potentially that weight is to compensate for presumed braking power advantage they had, so it makes their brakes less efficient now. But obviously it takes a while to get used to because they've only had one qualifying session to bed in those brakes, and now they're in the race already. Looking at the career stats of Niederhauser and Nesov, Nesov only did 1 year as single-seaters last year in the Russia-organised Formula 4 series, which the circuits are probably as far away from the Red Bull Ring as you can get. Pretty much, you know, car parks, airports, but after many decades of use, they're basically racing circuits. And then Niederhauser, you know, he's raced in GP2, GP3, Langpan GT World Challenge for many years, so he's got a lot of experience, and even developing this car as well. Yeah, absolutely. Niederhauser is a quick driver, no doubt about it. He's just run wide again, though, there, out of the penultimate turn. Needs to be careful about that, and then the Soft does exactly the same thing anyway, coming out of turn number 10. But yeah, the KTM, you make it a good point there, actually. The weight has been added since race 1, and the only track time they've had since then was qualifying this morning. But of course, only one driver goes out in the car in qualifying, and that was Niederhauser. So Stefan Racina, the first time he will drive this car in its new specification, if you like, with the extra 50 kilos, will be in race conditions after the pit stop. So Stefan's going to have a pretty steep learning curve, isn't he, going into his stint here in race 2. Looks as though they might be well and truly in the thick of the battle. The exclusion from yesterday is under appeal, by the way. So Reiter Engineering, who run the KTM, have appealed that penalty, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, if you ask me, because had they not appealed it, had they just rolled over and accepted the penalty, they would have not had to serve their handicap for this race. But because they've applied for an appeal, the handicap stands. So they just have 15, in case they win. Exactly, just in case they win. So they have an extra 15 seconds in the pit lane. Considering they're not scoring points, you have to admire their dedication to the cause of getting that race victory accredited back to them. But yes, the success penalty may well make their life even harder today. Well, I think in the history of Reiter Engineering, it's probably a similar pattern, that when they get these new cars, and they do cause a bit of an upset when they're obviously very quick. The Diablo, was the Murcielago self-developed as well? Yes, I think it was. Yeah, and then the Gallardo as well. And the idea was they develop them, then customers go, oh, I'll have a bit of that. And eventually they get it to a point of development and success where they can sell it on to customers, and they have the expertise to support those customers as well, or let them do their own thing. Exactly, and that's why they're here this weekend. They're using this to test the car out, and there is no better way to test it than in competition. And this is a very competitive GT Championship, so if you want to go up against some of the best GT teams and drivers out there, International GTOpen is a good place to be. So that's why the Reiter Engineering squad, who have had a lot of success with Audis, particularly Lamborghinis, over the years, now switching their attention to the brand new KTM. Joe Osborne here, getting back away from Vincent Abril, 4th and 5th positions, 1.2 seconds behind Christian Klein now is Joe, so the gaps are stabilising a bit now. Even the lead gap has stabilised a little bit. Chavez 4.6 seconds ahead of Eastwood, although he was quite a bit quicker than the Aston Martin on the previous lap, but he needs to make good his escape, because the chances are he will come back out, or that car when it's handed over to Miguel Ramos will come back out behind the Aston Martin. So we're going to have another battle between the two, I think, in the second half of this race. And that's what I love about this kind of racing. You know, things settle down going into the middle part of the race, but we are only 3 minutes from the pit stop, and that turns everything back on its head again. Yeah, and they're adding around 0.3 of a second per lap, Chavez is to his lead. So it's at 4.8 now. I think he'd want it minimum 5 seconds, depending on what his pit stop penalty is. It a 10-second penalty?
Let's have a look. So the, yes, 10 seconds
10
for them.
seconds.
Yeah.
So if I was Eastwood, I would just follow what Chavez does when it comes to the pit stop strategy and come in at the same time, because obviously Teo Martin at the very start of the pit lane, Aston Martin's almost at the very end. So you're not going to be able to see what the other team's doing. But it also means if other cars are in at the same time, once they've gone past, the McLaren's going to have a straight run through, and the Aston Martin may have to let several cars pass. So as long as he knows he's on the same lap, as we're going to see Alexei Nezov try and overtake the KTM at the inside of turn 3 and completes the move. That's a 7th placed. And he's only lost a second to Callum McLeod in the last 10 minutes, which he was originally battling. So hopefully he can pull that back in, and we'll have another battle between a Pro-Am car and an Am car.
Yeah, that was a nice move, that. Nasov gets himself ahead of Niederhauser. You can see the KTM was a bit weak on the brakes because of that extra weight that it's carrying. Pit stop window then will open, not this time around, but possibly next time. It's going to be touch and go. 1 minute and 50 seconds left before the mandatory pit stop window opens. Everyone must pit in order to...
Car number 34, that's Charlie Eastwood's, has been given a black and white flag for the track limits. We can actually see the black and white flag, but we can't see Charlie Eastwood. So potentially that could lead to a penalty. It's
a warning at the moment for them, but that's again for turns 9 and 10. So that is not a penalty yet, but it could, as you say, become one if they keep on doing it. Here's the battle then between Jens Liebhauser and Manuel Lauk. This is for 2nd place in the AM category. And Manuel Lauk, the number 40 car for SPS Automotive Performance, with the number 44 behind, trying to find its way through. 44 is a little bit further up in the championship as well, so, but they make a bit of a mess of turn 1 there, and yeah, Jens Liebhauser got a bit too close to the back of Manuel Lauk's car then going into turn 1, almost ran into the back of it, and had to take to the escape road to avoid significant contact. Of course, just behind them is Brendan Irib in the number 7 McLaren that Ollie Milroy will take over. I was speaking to Ollie after yesterday's race, and he was ruining the safety car. It came out at the worst possible moment for them. As we see a replay, that could have so easily been significant contact there. He came within inches, I reckon, of running into the back of the other Mercedes, and good reactions actually there. He realised he'd missed his braking point, but he didn't try and commit to it. He bailed out and avoided making contact, so a sensible driving there.
Yeah, very, very close to contact. But it's good because the 2 Mercedes cars, so as a brand, that's the worst possible image to portray, the 2 cars hitting each other.
It's happened before, hasn't it? It's happened for McLaren already this year, and the Optimum Motorsport cars, one of which we're seeing on the screen now. This is the 4th place car of Joe Osborne, who, is it me or is he getting back at Christian Klein here? Yeah, the gap's back down, well, it was down to 1.0, now 1.17 of a second, as the pit window is now open. So who's going to blink first? The Pro cars don't have to rush in. It'll be the Pro-Am cars, like this one, that have the Am driver behind the wheel. So Marcello Hahn is the first in to hand over to Fran Rueda. The reason is you want to get your Pro driver in as quickly as you can. Also in is Brendan Irib in the Optimum McLaren. Florian Schultz is in. That's an all-Am Mercedes. That's the yellow car that we saw having that moment at turn 1. Maybe he's frightened himself now after missing his braking point at turn 1 and wants to get out of the car and hand it over to Florian Schultz. So there are the 4 cars in the pit lane then, because we've got the McLaren of Fran Rueda now getting in. Stefano Telly is in, that's the other car. Or Stefano Telly into the 48 car now, again a Pro-Am Ferrari. The lead then for this car, Enrique Chavez, 6.3 seconds. Took another 2/10 out of Eastwood in the first sector alone that time around. And Chavez, I think, the way he's going, will wait right until the end of the pit window. There's no need to bring him in. He's quite clearly the fastest car on the track, and the bigger the margin that he can pull over the Aston Martin, the more chance they have of retaining the lead after the pit stops.
However, it depends on where these cars come out on pits in relation to our leader. He's crossing the line now. We've got the first 2 of the cars that pitted coming out. I think he's going to get into turn 1 ahead of them. We can't quite see the pit exit there. Does look like he's come out ahead, so he's in the clear, whereas the Aston Martin, they'd quite like to get caught up in this, and that'll help the leader significantly. Yeah,
which might just happen because you lose just under a lap from making a pit stop here. So, no, the Aston Martin's cleared them as well, so that's good news for Eastwood. He's 6.3 seconds off the lead now, but Enrique Chavez at least has not been able to steal a further advantage from him. Nicky Luttweiler is in the Porsche to hand over to Nicky Luttweiler because he is driving this car solo. And and that means that this pit stop is a slightly less complicated affair. He doesn't have to get out of the car, just sits and waits. There is a minimum time, though, for all of the cars of, I think it's 70 seconds, so there's no advantage to not doing a driver change. Still all have to be sat in the pit lane for roughly the same time, and then they add on the extra handicap seconds based on your podium success. Chavez then, back up the hill. He's got still another 9 minutes and 20 seconds left of the pit window, so yeah, like I said, I think he'll leave this right to the end. Charlie Eastwood, though, I wonder whether he might come in and hand over to Sally Yollock a little bit early, because Eastwood doesn't have the pace at the moment, does he?
Yeah, and we need to see the first lap times of the pros that are now in the cars that have pitted, because if they're suddenly going faster than Charlie Eastwood and closing in on him as well, he's going to have a lot on his plate to worry about. Last warning for car 24 for track limits, that is the KTM of Patrick Niederhauser. He hasn't even handed that car over yet, and he's already set for a penalty, it's looking like at this rate.
Yeah, so Stefan Rossina will take the car over, a car that he's not driven in that specification before, a car that's not going to handle as well as it did yesterday. Oh, and by the way, if you exceed track limits once, you've got a penalty, so absolutely no room for error. In comes Vincent Abril, Louis Pret to take over the number 17 Ferrari. This is a pro car that was running in the 5th position. And Louis Pret will jump on board, a car that is second in the championship then. But so far, only half of the field, just less than half the field, have made their way in. The bulk of the pro-driven cars are staying out there. The timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, the red numbers are the pros, the blues are the pro-ams, and the greens are the ams. And the pro-ams, which really have to time the pit stop the best, really, because with the ams and the pros, it doesn't really matter when you stop, because both drivers should be of an equal performance, but there is a difference in performance between the pro and the ams within the pro-am teams, and that's where strategy really comes into it. You've got to time it right. Equally, though, you don't want to wait out there too long in case you end up getting a safety car, which could completely mess up the strategy. There is Eastwood, so Eastwood is not that far ahead of Ollie Milroy, who's trying to unlap himself in the number 7 McLaren. Ollie Milroy immediately is about to set that car's personal best lap of the race, I think. 1 minute 30 point... old 29.5, in fact. That's a really impressive lap time for Milroy, and you can see he's bringing Fran Rueda with him, so Eastwood has got a couple of quick cars behind him, but they're not for position. But they are still going to try to take some time out of Eastwood. This kind of shows, though, that Eastwood is not on the same pace as those guys. Okay, they've just stuck some fresh tyres on their cars as well, which will help, but Eastwood is a little slower than some of these cars that have already pitted. Definitely a 50-50 split here on strategy. We had 5 or 6 cars came in straight away at the first possible opportunity, and the rest look happy to leave it right to the end. Fran Rueda here dicing with Ollie Milroy then. 2 McLarens run from different teams. Optimum Motorsports car in front of the Teo Martin Motorsport car. And Fran Rueda, again, looking a little bit quicker. Sir Marcello Han looking very calm and composed after his nearly half an hour stint in the car. And of course, Fran Rueda was leading yesterday's race, remember, when he handed over to Marcello Han. And Fran, we were saying, basically the performance that we've seen from Enrique Chavez in this race is exactly what Fran Rueda did in yesterday's race in the sister car. Pulled out a massive lead before the pit stops. The trouble was, he got a safety car, and that meant that everyone caught him. But these Teo Martin cars, if you give them some clean air, they're hard to keep up with. Yeah, well, we actually saw that with Enrique Chavez when he was mired down the order in that first race. I think he was in 9th place, and as soon as he got past the cars he was battling with, he rapidly closed in, and then obviously he ended up being at the top of the podium, which was a remarkable drive, and it's something we've seen multiple times this season. Yeah, exactly. The car, the 59 car that's been on the podium in almost every race this year, but can they do it again here? You'd say a podium is definitely doable. Race win might be a bit harder with the success penalty. KTM, I can see, has just come into the pit lane, so that is Stefan Rossina about to get in for Patrick Niederhauser. That's exactly at half distance, so they're sharing it very evenly at KTM. Yeah, well, both drivers proved yesterday they're pretty evenly matched, aren't they? Not much difference between them, so as that car pits, the McLaren battle for 10th position continues. Louis Pret has got back out in front of these cars, as you'd expect, because he was running a good 15 seconds or so, I think, further up the road than them before the pit stops. Chavez then through the middle sector. That is Louis Pret behind him, I believe, who is the lead car of those that have stopped, and it'll be interesting to see where the KTM comes out in relation to him. It should be behind it, not only because it was behind it before the stops began, but also because it has that success penalty. 5 minutes to go in the pit stop window, nearly 29 minutes left in the race, and he's coming in this time. So they've gone just past half race distance, and now the race leader comes in. So Enrique Chavez for Aston Martin Motorsport hits the pit lane, attacks it, slows down to the pit lane speed limit just in time, and the pit crew are ready and waiting. In he comes. First pit box, has to drive over that carpet underneath the race control building, which, if it was wet, would be rather slippery. And, Ramos then gets into the car. They're like a well-oiled machine, aren't they? They are very efficient in the pit stops. Where will that car come out? That is going to be the question. So Eastwood now takes over the race lead. I'm surprised in a way they're leaving the Aston Martin out there as long as they are, and I'm surprised they didn't do what you said, which was follow the McLaren in, because there's no real benefit to be had here from staying out a lap longer.
Well, at 8 seconds deficit before they came in, and with 2 blind corners ending the lap, he couldn't actually see what the leader was going to do. So by the time the leader would have got round the final corner anyway, he wouldn't have known if he was in the pit or on track. So I think Eastwood's already in a losing position here.
That's true, although if the team were really on the ball, and TF Sport normally are, they could have been on the radio to him to tell him to come in. Warning flag car 16 track limits. That's Fran Rueda making himself comfortable in the car. As Eastwood heads through the middle sector, I can see out of the window that Miguel Ramos has just left the pit lane, and there is no sign of Louis Pret yet, who is the first of the cars, or was the first of the cars on track to have pitted. There is Ramos going down the pit lane, out of the window I still go, and now into the final corner, only now is going Louis Pret. So yeah, the McLaren is going to come out comfortably in front. Now Eastwood is pitting, so this is the key moment then. Can the Aston Martin use the McLaren's handicap penalty to try and get the lead back away? Onto the brakes, into the pit lane, and Eastwood handing over to Sally Yolok, who has again really improved as a driver over recent years. Right down the pit lane.
And it looks like Stefan Ortelli in 13th place is just about to overtake KTM and Stefan Messina for 12th place. That is a Pro-Am car versus a Pro car. But those are 2 cars that would much rather be further up the order right now, and they're battling for pretty much last place. Yeah,
Ortelli should be able to gain some ground in this stint, you would imagine. It also is Sam Dehaan, so, sorry, it's Callum McLeod. Sam Dehaan will take over. And that leaves only 4 cars yet to stop. Christian Klein and Joe Osborne lead the way. They've yet to pit. Alexei Nassov in 3rd. Stopped, and nor has Manuel Lauk in the number 40 Mercedes. Fist bumps there at the Teo Martin squad, but I'm watching to see where that McLaren is. Where is Miguel Ramos in comparison with Sally Yolok in the Aston Martin? Ramos is in the final sector somewhere. We're watching on screen a battle between a couple of the AM cars here with the second place man, Joe Osborne. In fact, no, sorry, this is actually the battle for the lead. Christian Klein
Here comes
and Joe
McLaren
Osborne
around the final corner, I think.
Yep, and out goes the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin's done it. The Aston Martin is out of the pit lane, significantly ahead. That's the difference of that handicap, because there is Miguel Ramos. Sally Yolok then should come out with the race lead after the pit stops have been done, by actually a much bigger margin than I thought. There you can see the distance. It's almost the entire length of the straight. It's not actually a straight between turns 1 and 3, but that flat out section between the first 2 real corners. As into the pit lane now come Klein and Osborne, the top 2 in the race now. They could come out between the Aston Martin and the McLaren as well. So this is another important pair of pit stops. Joe Osborne is handing over to Nick Moss, and Patrick Krapinski is jumping into the JP Motorsport car. The difference here, though, is that whilst Miguel Ramos and Sally Yolok are both Pro entries, these are Pro-Am cars, and it is the slower Am that's about to get in.
Yeah, and what's going to help these cars, I don't think there are any other cars needing to pit, so they've got a clean exit as they leave the pit lane as well. Could it get in between the Aston Martin? Because they've neither have a success penalty, but they've already got warming up their tyres, the Aston Martin has, and the McLaren as well. So potentially these guys could come out 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, I think they're going to get out ahead of Ramos. I really do, because they don't have any success penalties, these two, remember, because the 88 car finished. Oh no, the 88 car does.
And there's a TS Sport car about to cross the start-finish line and has already passed all but one of the Mercedes in the pits. He's passed that one as well, so this is our new race leader, I would expect. Where is the McLaren?
Going through
Crosses the line now.
Yep, so it's going to beat them, and he's going to beat them because, of course, whilst they didn't have overall podiums, those two cars, they were both on the Pro-Am podium, and so they do have Pro-Am.
And that was actually one of the AM cars involved in that. So we've got an AM car in 4th place overall potentially now.
Right, okay, let's see how this is going to shake out. That could be the number 13, couldn't it, of Moisev? Yes, it is. Who gets out just alongside? Is that Louis Pret? I think it is. So the number 13 Mercedes is alongside the AF Corsa Ferrari, but the Ferrari has the momentum. It's on the outside line into turn number 3, and Louis Pret will hang on to 4th place. But yeah, you're absolutely right then. So that is the number 13 of Alexander Moisev in the all-AM driven Mercedes, running in the top 5 overall. This would be an incredible result if they could hang on. And actually, the next car behind them there, the green and black McLaren, is another AM driver in the number 72 Optimum Motorsport McLaren, that of Nick Moss. So they've got a bit of a buffer between themselves and the pros behind.
And when it comes to the Pro-Am victory now, we've got Sam Zahan and Ollie Milroy, who, you know, well, Sam Zahan is an AM driver, but is very quick. Huge gap between them and the class leader, Patrick Kropinski, up front. Yeah,
so this is going to be the leader then. This is Sally Yolok coming out of the final corner, and he has a 6-second lead, I reckon, more or less anyway, over Miguel Ramos. Let's see what the gap is. The leader goes through at the end of lap 24, and the next car through, in fact, is Kropinski. So it's Kropinski in second and Ramos in third. The gap between first and third is 10.5 seconds, and they are separated by the AM driver Kropinski in second place. Louis Pret comes through 7 seconds later in 4th place, ahead of Alexander Moisev in 5th. Nick Moss is 6th, Sam Dahan 7th, Ollie Milroy 8th, Fran Rueda 9th, and Christian Hook rounds out the top 10.
And without that success penalty in the pit stop, would the advantage between Yolok and Ramos be half a second right now?
Yes, exactly, yeah, it would have been very, very tight indeed. So that is the TF Sport, they knew that was going to happen then. They knew that they had the advantage when it came to the handicap, so they didn't really need to engage in too much argy-bargy with the McLaren in the first part of the race. But now they have to watch their mirrors, because I think Miguel Ramos is going to be on a charge. Put in a good stint yesterday, did Miguel, doing lots of overtaking. So if he has half a chance, he's going to go for this, I think. The battle we're watching then on screen is the one for 4th place. It is, well, really actually for 5th place. Alexander Moisev in the Mercedes, then Nick Moss in the McLaren, AM drivers, both of them. Sam Dahan is also an AM driver, but I would venture is a little bit quicker than those two. And he's got the pros, Ollie Milroy and Fran Rueda, right behind. So these 5 cars pretty close together. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th there. They all are in the shot there, all slowly catching the Mercedes, whilst also battling amongst themselves. So this is going to get quite busy here, I think.
And the question is if Alexander Moisev in this AM car, taking over for a brilliant stint by Alexei Nezov, is actually going to get sucked in by these faster drivers behind, or if he's going to kind of match his teammates' ability and keep them all behind, because 5th place finish for an AM car would be brilliant.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to look at what the best overall finish for an AM driver was. We had a 7th place for the 44 car yesterday, didn't we? But I think that is probably the best we've had all year from an all-AM entry. It's very, very hard to do. Sam Dahan there getting a bit squirrely on the brakes into turn number 1, and Ollie Milroy is all over him now in the Optimum McLaren. And what's the straight line speed like on that McLaren? It's usually pretty potent, and he might be able to have a go here into turn number 3. He's got the Teo Martin car of Fran Rueda applying the pressure to him as well. McLaren's really ganging up on this Mercedes here, aren't there? There are 2 Mercedes and 3 McLarens in this 5-car train. And are they catching Moisev on the previous lap? Yes, they did, by about just under 3/4 of a second. So Nick Moss in 6th is catching Moisev in 5th, and he's under pressure from Sam Dahan, Ollie Milroy and Fran Rueda behind. At the head of the field, by the way, Patrick Kropinski on the previous lap was only a few tenths slower than Sally Yolok, the race leader. The lead gap is 6.7 seconds, but Ramos is quicker than the pair of them. So that is going to be the big story at the front of the field now. Can Ramos overhaul Kropinski and chase down Sally Yolok for the lead?
And it's almost the same story here, because Ramos' teammate Fran Rueda is also lapping in the 1:29. As in race 1, it's the 2 McLarens that are capable of this lap time, but he's at the back of the train. He's currently in 9th place, and he's got the pace to basically be fighting at the front. Yeah, but it's just so hard to find a way through when everyone is as evenly matched as they are. This is why it's great to have this mix of the driver rankings out there, the pros and the AM sharing the track at the same time. And Nicky Luttweiler has just gone in 2nd place in the AM class, because Christian Hook's lost 2 places to him and Stefan Ortelli. Ortelli is 10 seconds behind this battle, so I don't think he'd get involved for the end of the race. We only have 19 minutes left. About 19 minutes and 9 seconds between 1st and 3rd at the moment. That could get close at the end.
I think Ramos can do this, I really do. It will all hinge on how long it takes him to get past Patrick Rapinski, I think, because he's going to catch him within the next couple of laps. This battle is still very, very tight indeed, as they're already pretty congested, and when they catch Moisev, it's all going to get even tighter. So this has trouble written all over it, this scrap, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and actually the second fastest car on that last lap was Florian Scholz in the AM car, 1 minute 29.99, 27.4 second last sector. That must be track limits violation to be that quick in the final sector.
Well, car 72 is being warned about track limits in the final sector. That's Nick Moss in the green McLaren just going through, but no sign yet of the 44 car getting in trouble. That car was running really well, of course, before the pit stops, but had a handicap to serve. Because it's not just based on overall results, it's class podiums that will get you handicap seconds added on. The hill then, Fran Rueda maybe a bit closer to Ollie Milroy this time, and Nick Moss is definitely having a go here at Moisev into the penultimate corner, but that's not really an overtaking opportunity. McLaren didn't look very stable over the curb there, so Nick Moss wants to get on with this and put a car between himself and the quicker cars behind him. If he can do that and Moisev holds off the rest for a few laps, then Moss might be able to escape. He goes to the inside across the start-finish line. That McLaren is so good in a straight line, and it's equally good on the brakes, and Nick Moss will go through. 5th position now belongs to Optimum Motorsport, and Sam Dahan tries to follow through. Can't draw alongside the Mercedes though. That was perfectly done, that, by Moss.
Yeah, almost bump drafted him, and he's come to the outside line. No, he's going to switch to the inside line, going up the hill to turn 3. Are we going to see another overtake between the two Mercedes there? Later on the brakes, and he completes the move. And actually, the AM car has just let 2 cars through at once, and possibly 3 as well if Fran Rueda can get through. Yeah, that's always the risk when you've got a train of cars behind you. Once one opens the door, the rest are keen to follow through. So Ollie Milroy's gone through. Fran Rueda is also going to get past. That's a shame for Moisev, because that dream top 5 result overall might now have disappeared, but he's still comfortably leading the AM class, and that, at the end of the day, is the priority. So new order then: Moss 5th, Dahan 6th, Milroy 7th, Rueda 8th, and Moisev drops down into 9th position overall, but as I said, still leading his class. And now we watch to see whether or not Nick Moss can escape. The 2 cars at the head of this group now are both Pro-Am cars. The whole group is Pro-Am.
It is actually, yeah, you're right, yes, because Fran Rueda is also Pro-Am, so they're all Pro-Am cars. The top 2 are Am drivers, the next 2 are Pros, and it's Nick Moss that runs a little bit wide over the runoff area coming out of the penultimate corner.
And Stefan Rosina has finally overtaken Christian Hook for 12th place. That KTM is really not having a good race today, down in 12th. 38 seconds off, 4 seconds behind the AM car of Nicky Leutwiler, and a full 15 seconds behind these cars. Yeah, well, 15 seconds were lost due to the handicap for that car. Replay here of Nick Moss going up the inside into turn 1. Nicely done, and then Sam Dahan thought about it up the inside, then he went to the outside, then he went back to the inside again, and well, Moisev did his best to hold them off, but once the door was open, they were all coming through. So Nick Moss then moves through into 5th position, and with an angle here of the Optimum McLaren, and its very fancy rear view camera, which has little arrows hovering over the cars chasing them to let you know how close they are exactly. Certainly more effective than an old standard wing mirror, that's for sure. Lead gap is 7.9 seconds now, by the way, between Jolek and Krapinski, and Ramos is still a 1.5 seconds behind Krapinski. He's going to catch him in the next lap or so, but he's not actually taking that much time out of Sally Jolek, so you're not missing anything at the front of the field. All of the action is from 5th on back. Moss, Dahan, Milroy, Rueda, 5th place overall, 2nd place in the Pro-Am category up for grabs. And again, speaking to Ollie Milroy yesterday, he said their focus was very much on the Pro-Am result. We were commenting yesterday about how Brendan Iribe did not let his teammate Joe Osborne through quite as easily as they let the Pro TF Sport Aston Martin through, and that's exactly why. They thought then, we're not fighting Aston Martin for class points, we are, however, fighting our teammates for Pro-Am honours, and so the Pro-Am teams very much looking to try and outdo each other here for the Pro-Am Championship. So here goes the battle. We saw a glimpse there of Krapinski and Ramos, only a second apart now. Car 17, Louis Pret being warned about track limits at turns 1, 9 and 10, which are the 3 corners that everyone is exceeding track limits at. So Joe Osborne watches on from the pit wall, chatting away to Nick Moss, and it's always fascinating watching the pros, isn't it? Because
they really do talk the AMs around the lap, don't they? It's almost constant radio chatter, just trying to feed all of the relevant information to the AM driver. That is what the AM drivers need, though. They need to know what's going on. They need to be coached, and that really is the job of the pro driver. In a pro-am based class like this, the job of the pro is to be basically a driver coach during the race to the AM driver.
Yeah, that's their job. Their job is pretty much helping their co-driver, and then their hobby is pretty much getting in the car for the second stint and driving it themselves. Obviously, when you are a pro driver, you think your way is the best, per se. And when a lot of these pro drivers get rotated around different cars, different teams, so they have to go through a learning process as much as that AM drivers do sometimes. And even when you get new circuits, obviously Red Bull Ring has been on the calendar for a few years, but not every pro driver will have visited these European circuits when the cars have been developed in other series.
Oh, now here comes Ollie Milroy having a go at Sam Dahan, who looks a little bit wayward there, maybe turning into the first corner. Does feel a little bit like a stalemate situation here, doesn't it, with Nick Moss just holding them up a little bit, but no one can really get close enough to attack. Sam Dahan is having a go up the inside into turn 3, but Nick Moss defended it well, and then just moves over in the braking zone to stop Sam Dahan getting to the outside there, almost touching as they come off the corner. That couldn't have been much closer there between those two and Milroy, who will be really feeling frustrated here. He knows he's quicker than these two drivers, but he just can't quite find a way past. He's going to hover around behind the Mercedes here, which runs a bit deep into the braking zone. Can Milroy tee it up on the exit, get to the inside through turn 5? He might have his nose in the door. Oh, but Sam Dahan had that covered, moves across. Milroy goes to the inside now into the next corner. There's going to be contact, surely. They just avoid it. And Milroy, yeah, you can sense that frustration now, can't you? He's getting more and more eager to get ahead of Sam Dahan in front and try and challenge for second place in class.
Yeah, it's looking like the Mercedes are stronger at the end of straights, but it's out of the corner to McLaren's better. So while the Mercedes can get alongside on the run to turn 3, on the exit of the corner, Nick Moss just pulls away again. And it's, like you said, it's a stalemate. We're seeing other battles converge though. Florian Scholz has rapidly closed in on Christian Hook, and that will be for 3rd place on the AM class podium. Stefan Ortelli is closing in on Alexander Moisev, and you actually see him at the back of frame, so he'll be wanting to get 9th place now. And Miguel Ramos is pretty much on the back of Patrick Krupinski for 2nd place in this race. Still has 9-second deficit to Sally Yoluk with 11 minutes to go. So it is going to get pretty dicey in the final minutes, I think.
Yeah, and behind Ortelli is Nicky Luttweiler, 2nd in AM, and he is lapping quicker than the AM leader now, Alexander Moisev, who you can see has really dropped away from this group. You can see the Mercedes in the background, and then we didn't quite catch at the top of the screen the white and red Porsche, but it is closing slightly with Ortelli between them, but he is running in the Pro-Am category. Last warning, car 72, Nick Moss, for track limits at turns 9 and 10. The green and black McLaren at the head of this train, and also warning flag number 13, Alexander Moisev, the AM leader. This is the fight for 2nd place. Now, Miguel Ramos has caught Patrick Krupinski, but not as quickly as I thought he would do, and he's not able to simply drive past the Mercedes, it would seem. Krupinski is putting in a good stint here, the AM driver in this JP Motorsport car. They won at Paul Ricard at Hungaroring, at the start of the year, so they have podium potential here. This is not going to be an easy overtake.
Certainly not, but it's 2 different manufacturers, which is going to make it a little easier than having a McLaren on McLaren fight or a Mercedes on Mercedes. And we do know Miguel Ramos is used to doing these kinds of charges. He knows where to make the moves. And here's a replay of Florian Scholz overtaking Christian Hook for the last spot on the AM class podium and 13th overall in this race. Only 47 seconds actually covering this 14-car field, so it's still a close race in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, exactly, and everyone's got someone within their own class within at least a few seconds of each other, or in this case, in the Pro-Am category, absolutely nose to tail. Nick Moss still 2nd in Pro-Am, Sam Dahan still 3rd, Ollie Milroy and Fran Rueda right behind them, also in the same category as they head up the hill. Can the McLaren of Ollie Milroy have a go at the Mercedes under braking? Sam Dahan is very late on the brakes there, just about hangs on.
And it looks like Stefan Ortelli could make a move on Alexander Moisev at the back of frame. We might not see it there, but he was right on his gearbox coming up to turn 3. We're going to check the timing screen to see if a move has been made. Yeah,
he was only 3/10 behind at the line as well, so I think you might be right with that one. The second sector should be completed fairly shortly by that group, and we'll be able to give you the times then. Second sector ends actually just into turn 7, where these two have just gone through, Krupinski and Miguel Ramos, and Miguel Ramos having caught the Mercedes, is now having quite a hard time getting through. Looking out of the window, and we're staring to see whether Ortelli has made this move sticking the Ferrari. He hasn't yet, but I think he's about to. So yeah, by the end of the lap, more than likely the Ferrari will be through.
And now might be the best time for Miguel Ramos to make a move as well. Kind of drawing up alongside down the pit straight. He's not going to make it.
Oh, contact! Milroy and Dahan make contact into the penultimate corner, and Ollie Milroy is out of the race with damaged left rear suspension. And if that car gets stranded, it could be a safety car. Dahan goes round as well, right in front of Fran Rueda. That could have been even worse for the Aston Martin McLaren, which thankfully comes out of that without making contact with the Mercedes. But that was Milroy going up the inside of Dahan into the penultimate corner. He made the move but couldn't stop the car, and the two touched, and both appear to be out of the race.
And Ortelli made his move as well, but that was during yellow flag, so he might get a penalty for that. Asked to hand it back. I think a steering link broke on one of those cars as well, looking at how it suddenly span round as well.
Yeah, it was front right of the Mercedes into rear left of the McLaren, so I think it will be the Mercedes that had the steering damage, and left rear toe link probably out for the McLaren. Now, if we get a safety car, that will close everything up, but Ramos really could do with being in front of Krupinski here, couldn't he?
McLaren is still stuck there, the Optima Motorsport car, facing the wrong way and not doing anything.
Yeah, and Sam Dahan's car, I think, is still stuck at the final corner as well, so I think they might try and cover it under yellows, but that would be a risk, you'd have to say, but we are quite close to the end of the race. They've been pretty quick at getting cars out of the way here this weekend, so if we were to get a safety car, it could be a brief one. Krupinski there really not backing off as much as Ramos.
Yeah, the driver is getting out the car, thankfully, but there's only single waved yellows at that corner. It's a downhill, blind, flat out corner. I'm very surprised. Yeah, should be a safety car.
Yeah, it had to be, didn't it? I know what you're saying there. It's a dangerous enough corner anyway, especially when you've got two cars parked on the outside, and Ollie Milroy is going to trudge through the gravel now. And when he gets back to the pit lane, he'll have a little chat, I think, with Sam Dahan. Here's the replay. Well, it's already happened, the contact at this point. Milroy goes off with the damage, and then Dahan, as he turned into the...
Fran Rueda who actually...
Well, Rueda was up the inside.
The second bit of contact, as we're going to see further round there.
He was going past Dahan, wasn't he? Now, did they make contact? Yes, they did, didn't they? That well spotted.
Yeah, so Dahan closed off the line, and then Fran Rueda still tried going into it.
Yeah, so that will be a talking point. Sam Dahan has just limped back to the pit lane. This is on board with Dahan after the first contact, and bang, there is the second hit. And that car is supposed to be out racing at Donington Park in a week's time. I hope they can get the damage fixed. It shouldn't be too bad. And the Aston Martin squad, very interested to see what happens out of that one.
And when Miguel Ramos is now behind Louis Prat for third place by 2 seconds now. I wonder how that's happened, because Louis Prat did set his personal best lap when there was yellow flags being waved on the previous lap. And Miguel Ramos was right on the tail of Patrick Kapinski, had pretty much got past before. Yeah, this is very confusing. We're seeing the leader on camera now. We're going to try and see where second and third place are. There's Patrick Kapinski. There is Louis Prat about to cross the start-finish line. And there is Miguel Ramos in fourth.
Well, there are two possibilities here. Either Ramos saw the safety car boards before Louis Prat did, and so Louis Prat has sped past him, in which case it's quite simple. They'll just redress the situation. The other is that Ramos might have a problem, because just before the safety car came out, he dropped way behind Patrick Krupinski. Now, I presume that's because he's seen the yellow flags and he was assuming there was going to be a safety car, but is there an issue of some sort, I wonder, for the McLaren?
He is he's training a huge amount of time.
Yeah, he's a long way back. He's just dropped a lot further back than he needs to.
Yeah, and I was about to say that the safety car was going to benefit more than anyone, Miguel Ramos, but it clearly isn't now.
Yes, so this leaves the stewards with a headache as well, because if the McLaren has a problem, then in theory the Ferrari of Louis Prat was entitled to pass it, but the McLaren is now closing back up again, and we don't know officially whether that move was made before or after the safety car came out. You'd have to assume it was afterwards, but
I think the gap to Louis Prat was around 10 seconds.
Yeah, so it must have been after the safety car came out, in which case these should swap.
Potentially, could Miguel Ramos have pitted for fresh tyres and we didn't spot? Is there a possibility of that happening?
He's only showing one pit stop on the timing screen, so I don't think so, but that could have been a valid strategy here. Although we're only going to have a couple of minutes to go here, aren't we? So no, I think he's just slowed on the track for whatever reason, and Prat has taken advantage of it.
I think Louis Pret could win this race now.
Yeah, well, he should be quicker than Krupinski, and well, his fastest lap is not as quick as the Aston Martin's fastest lap, but I think it's been quicker than Sally Yolok's fastest lap. I think Charlie Eastwood set the TF Sport Car's fastest lap of the race. It all depends how long we have left, and we're going to have another lap of safety car here because the recovery vehicle is still hoisting the McLaren, the Ollie Milroy McLaren, out of the way. You can see it there at the top of your shot. So we're going to get one more lap of safety car. A safety car lap is going to be obviously slower than a green flag racing lap. We only have just under 4 minutes to go.
Patrick Krupinski will not want to let Louis Pret past here because there's 3 Pro-Am cars in a line behind Louis Pret and Miguel Ramos, and Patrick Krupinski is leading the Pro-Am class. Did have a somewhat 10-15 second buffer to those drivers, and now that's gone, there's a potential loss of a class win.
Yeah, exactly, and the 88 car and the 16 McLaren are the highest placed Pro-Am cars in the outright championship as well, because the 16 car is 4th in the points and the 88 is 5th, so they're actually fighting for pretty decent overall championship positions as well. Right, that last safety car lap was 2.5 minutes long, and we had about 3.5 minutes left on the clock when this lap started. We should go racing this time. I think it will be a 1-lap sprint, and that might just be enough to save Sally Yolok in the race lead. Might it be enough for Krupinski to hang on to 2nd place overall, because he only has to defend from Louis Pret for 1 lap if that is the case.
And none of these drivers are under investigation for the incidents that put the other Optimum McLaren out the race, so be very interesting to see if they do go take a few more risks on this last lap as well.
Ollie Milroy didn't look happy, it's fair to say, as he trudges back to the pit lane there.
And at the back of frame is our 2 AM-class leaders. It'd be a great shame if the number 13 Mercedes does lose this class win, because that had, what, like a 30-second advantage at one point?
Yes, and it did have Stefan Ortelli as a buffer, but Ortelli made that move, as you said, just before the safety car came out, so that puts Nicky Luttweiler right on the tail now of the AM leader Moisev.
But he did make it while yellow flags were being waved.
Yes, possibly. So there could be a discussion there, but either way, it doesn't affect the AM battle. It still means that they are nose to tail, so that's the white and green Mercedes and the white and red Porsche you can see towards the back of the shot. We're going to have... Is it going to be 1 or 2? Oh, this is what happened to Ramos then. So Pret is behind him. The yellow flags aren't out yet, are they? No safety car board there, and Ramos just slows down. But there is no sign that there are marshals there, and they don't have a safety car board out.
Possibly an engine mode issue?
Well, in which case, is he going to get up to speed on the restart, which is happening now then? So Sally Yolok has engaged the right foot and accelerates down to the final corner. I think they are only going to get 1 lap in. It's going to be very tight. Yeah, it will just about be 1 more lap to go, and the battle is on for 2nd place already. Louis Pret up the inside of Patrick Krupinski for P2. He can't overtake him before the line. No, he judged it perfectly, but now he's got the inside line for turn 1, and the Ferrari will go ahead. That was absolutely pivotal, because it gives him now the best part of a lap to try and chase down Sally Yolok for the race lead. Miguel Ramos' car has accelerated away off the restart, but it's not able to go with these 2 at the moment, and in fact Krupinski is fighting back. That Mercedes has good traction, good torque off the first corner, and it drags back alongside the Ferrari. There goes Fran Rueda up the inside of Nick Moss as well. That's for Pro-Am position. That's for 2nd in the Pro-Am category. Pret hangs on to 2nd place overall. Moss is out wide, and Stefan Ortelli comes up the inside of the pair of them as well. There's a big squeeze between the 2 McLarens and the Ferrari, but the 2nd AF Corsa car of Stefan Ortelli is set to gain quite a few positions within the Pro-Am category. Here it goes through on the inside of Fran Rueda, runs him out wide. Nick Moss is back up the inside. Moisev is in there as well, trying desperately to stay ahead of the Porsche for the AM class lead. Sally Yolok should be good for the race victory. Louis Pret in 2nd place, but all of the action is behind, and there around the outside goes that's Florian Schultz, I think, isn't it, in the 44 car, trying to take 2nd place in the AM category.
And we've got a drive-through penalty for car 69 causing collision. That's Sam Zahan, who is in the pits. That's actually not going to impact the result, but it does mean that the Pro-Am order, potentially, they're going to go down the standings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam Dahan in the Ram Racing squad in trouble for the contact then, but here comes the race leader, the race winner. TF Sport are going to take their 2nd victory of the season. They become the 2nd team to win more than 1 race in 2020. Aston Martin wins at the Red Bull Ring then. Sally Yolok wins for TF Sport. 2nd place goes to Louis Pret, and for 3rd, 4th and 5th, it was very close. It is Patrick Krupinski in 3rd, who wins the Pro-Am category. Miguel Ramos, oh dear, he's in 4th place, and Stefan Ortelli in 5th. What a finish.
And the AM class fighters were actually hitting each other after the line then. Nicky Luttweiler having contact with Schultz. Schultz, who beat Christian Hook by 0.046 seconds over the line for the final spot on the podium.
fantastic racing there. We do love a dramatic finish, and that late safety car certainly gave us one. Sally Yollock brings it home, though, with the race victory. TF Sport are victorious, and that does their championship hopes the world of good. Louis Pret is second, Patrick Krupinski third, Miguel Ramos fourth, Stefan Ortelli fifth, then Fran Rueda and Nick Moss in sixth and seventh, respectively. Moisev is eighth and wins in the AM category. Stefan Racina for Ryder Engineering endures a difficult race to ninth place. The Swiss driver Nicky Luttweiler is rounding out the top 10, second place in AM. Then it's Florian Scholz and Christian Hook, third and fourth in AM, with Sam Dahan and Ollie Milroy out of the race, and Sam Dahan in the Ram Racing car given the penalty as well. Right, Drivers' Championship, 7 points is all that separate the Teo Martin McLaren from the AF Corsa Ferrari, and the Aston Martin is only a further point back. So 8 points cover the top 3 as we go into the second half of the season. Christian Klein and Patrick Krupinski are in fourth place then, and that has all changed then. It's bunched everything up nicely now at the top of the table. This is that contact, and they just avoided contact, but that was Christian Hook, who was, oh no, there was contact there between Luttweiler, you're right, and Scholz, but it was Scholz trying to pull out to pass Luttweiler, and he almost put Christian Hook into the pit wall. So maybe a few words to be exchanged there at the end of the race. The class winners then, obviously TF Sport win in the Pro class, Rapinski and JP Motorsport win in Pro Am, and it is Alexander Moisev that comes home to win the AM class.
And I'm wondering if the drive-through penalty for Sam Dahan Mercedes might actually get converted to a grid penalty for the next event, because obviously the car finished in the pits 4 laps down, so it can't actually impact its race result.
Yes, although I don't know if they're back for the next round, because they were a one-off entry, as I understood. Of course, that team and car racing in the British GT Championship this season to great success. Second place in the championship at the moment are Sam Dahan and Patrick Kujala, who is his teammate in the British GT Championship. So we'll see. If they do come back next time, they may well have a penalty to serve. But, well, for the podium finishers, some good points scored there, and I think the team that are going to be the most frustrated here are Teo Martin, because they really were in a position to win that race. They had a comfortable lead before the pit stops. Obviously the handicap put them back a little bit, but Miguel Ramos didn't really have the scintillating pace in his stint that I thought he would do, and then obviously this mystery issue as the safety car came out has obviously put him down to fourth place, and they'll be disappointed not to be on the podium. The good thing is, though, at least that means they won't have a handicap going to the next rounds of the championship, but I think on balance they'd have rather taken the extra points for a top 3 finish. Yeah,
if you looked at the pace alone, it's very odd to say that McLaren's best result in this race was 4th place and the next one was 6th. In fact, the 2 Ferraris finished ahead in 2nd and 5th. Great drive by Stefan Ortelli, actually, because I think he took over the car several seconds behind kind of the next Pro-Am car or /Pro car in front, and he charged through, overtook on merit a lot of AM drivers and Pro-Am drivers. Then the safety car brought him onto the back of this train. He actually only made 1 overtake on that last lap.
Yeah, that's right, he did. So, well, it's at least is still some good points for them, but not as many as they might have liked. There is the winning moment then for TF Sport, and I tell you what, Louis Pret was closing in on Sally Yollock there at the end. And
the clash between Nicky Luttweiler and Florian Scholz that we did spot after the finish line, where they kind of biffed each other down the pit straight, is now under investigation. And that occurred after the race. And there's another incident involving 16 and 69, that's Fran Rueda and Sam Dahan. So that was the last corner failed overtake. That's also under investigation.
Yes, I hope the clerk of the course hasn't booked an early flight home tonight, because it's going to be a busy night, isn't it? Third place overall for JP Motorsport, their second visit to the podium this year for Patrick Krupinski in the 88 car and Christian Klein. Louis Pret and Vincent Abril are second for AF Corsa APS Monaco, but it's Aston Martin to the top, with TF Sport, Sally Yollock and Charlie Eastwood taking the race victory for the second time
Eastwood,
this year.
Sally Yollock, whenever you do pole, you win.
Yeah, it was a good race for us. Yeah, obviously we didn't have any penalty from the first round, so we were able to have quite a clean race. Like normal, it's never easy until it's over, and obviously the safety car came out, but a great restart by Sally, and he got to be nice and comfortable on the last lap.
Yeah, a safety car, but that didn't change much, Sally.
No, it was only 1 lap really, so it wasn't supposed to change much, but yeah, it was still unlucky to come that late in the race. But yeah, Charlie did a great job. Give me a good gap to manage, and yeah, it was similar to Ricard. I just had to manage.
And now the fight for the championship is very, very interesting. So well done, guys. See you in Monza. Enjoy the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. They are just 8 points behind now in the championship. Let's take a look then at the highlights of an extraordinary 6th round of the championship. It was the TF Sport car that started on pole position, and it was Charlie Eastwood who took over the first stint, for the battle between he and the Enrique Chavez McLaren in the first part of the race was very entertaining. Chavez went through at the first corner but ran wide into the runoff area in the process. He would later be ordered to give that position back. There was some contact there between the JP Motorsport Mercedes and the number 17 Ferrari, which allowed Joe Osborne up the inside, but he got a big squeeze by the 88 of Christian Klein and had to back out to the move. There was contact made as Alexei Nesov muscled his way up the order ahead of Marcello Hahn in the McLaren, and Nesov would find himself in the AM-class lead before much longer. The battle out in front was very tight indeed. Eastwood would not let Enrique Chavez through without a fight. The McLaren trying every which way to find a way through. It did eventually go ahead and pulled clear by about 7 seconds or so before the pit stops began. After the pit stops, it was the Pro-Am battle that was providing all of the entertainment, and eventually it went wrong with Ollie Milroy and Sam Dahan making contact. Milroy spun with damaged suspension, and then at the very next corner, Dahan was tagged into a spin by Fran Rueda, that incident being investigated after the race. The safety car was called for, we had a 1-lap restart, and immediately Louis Pret went on the attack, got on the inside of Patrick Krupinski for second place, and worked his way through into second with less than a lap to go. That didn't leave him though with enough time to close in on the race leader, so it was Sally Yolok that brought it home for TF Sport's second victory of the year. Louis Pret second, and Patrick Krupinski brought the JP Motorsport car back for its second podium finish of the year in third place. So the podium then is about to get going, and drivers then start to make their way up onto the podium. It's the overall podium that we will see first, the overall top three. Patrick Krupinski and Christian Klein onto the third step of the podium. It's AF Corsa who come home in second place though, with Louis Pret and Vincent Abril. Handshakes all round, fist pumps as they head in up to the second step of the podium. The race win goes for the second time this year to TF Sport and the Aston Martin. Charlie Eastwood and Sally Yolok with the race victory.
Now, the national anthem of Great Britain.
Charlie Eastwood and Sally Yolok for the British TF Sport squad win round number 6 of the International GTOpen Championship here at the Red Bull Ring after a terrific race-long battle with primarily the Aston Martin Motorsport McLaren, which fell down to 4th at the end, and that has allowed the championship battle to get extremely close as we head into the second half of the season now. We are halfway through the year. Halfway through the season anyway, more than halfway through the year I suppose. We go to Monza next, then Spa-Francorchamps and Barcelona. The TF squad having absolutely nothing to do with the champagne shower, but the JP Motorsport team are joining in the fun. And, it is a waste of good champagne really, isn't it? So they celebrate in their own way up on the podium. And next we move on to the Pro-Am podium, which will see another three different teams represented in the Pro-Am podium as well, of course, including the JP Motorsport squad that we've just seen up there. And it was really Pro-Am that provided the majority of the entertainment in the second half of the race there, with that terrific battle between the two Optimum cars, the Ram Racing Mercedes and the Aston Martin number 16 car, Fran Rueda, all nose to tail. So Pro-Am podium then about to get going, and the drivers about to be welcomed out, and we'll start with our third placed Pro-Am team of Fran Rueda and Marcello Hahn, the Aston Martin Motorsport squad. Scoring some more good points as well within the Pro-Am category. Second place in Pro-Am went to the AF Corsa car that was right at the back of the field at the pit stops, and Stefan Ortelli put in a brilliant stint to work his way through into 5th overall and 2nd in class for he and his teammate Angelo Negro. But the class win goes to JP Motorsport, and it is Christian Klein and Patrick Krapinski who take honours in the Pro-Am category. And a huge congratulations to all of our podium finishing teams and drivers. The Pro-Am Championship itself pretty tight coming into that race, with Marcello Hahn leading by only 4 points over the Klein and Krapinski pair. So I reckon that might mean that they are level on points now, possibly going to Monza next time. That's more like it. The second champagne shower for the JP Motorsport team, but all 6 drivers staying up there to enjoy their moment on the podium. JP Motorsport racking up the good results this weekend, really. 88 car was only 11th yesterday, so it's nice for them to bounce back for a really nice result in the second race of the weekend. Then the AM drivers wait patiently for their turn, last but certainly not least, and again, some good battling and some good stories there too. Nicky Luttweiler bouncing back after the issues he had yesterday, a mechanical problem in qualifying, a spin in the race, which meant that he missed out on the AM podium, which is not something that he's missed out on often over the course of the year. Nicky Luttweiler has been on the podium in every race so far, with the exception of the first race this weekend. Luttweiler does make the podium here in race 2. He's on the second step though, so first of all we welcome the Get Speed Performance team of Florian Scholz and Jens Liebhauser, who finished 3rd in Pro-Am, and they came home in 11th place overall. Only one of them has made their way onto the podium. There'll only be one person on the second step because Nicky Luttweiler drives on his own. But the class win in AM after a really fantastic drive where they ran as high as 5th place after the pit stops, and that is the number 13 Mercedes, the AKM Motorsport Mercedes of Alexei Nesov and Alexander Moisev. Moisev started the race. Nesov did his very, very best to try and hang on inside the top 5, and they in the end fell down to 8th place. Still a very impressive result overall for the AM team, and they are the AM class winners, and that will help them again in the championship standings. Well, a pair of fantastic races here at the Red Bull Ring. It's been a pleasure having you with us. We hope you've enjoyed the racing action from the International GTOpen this weekend. We'll be back again in 2 weeks' time at Monza. 8 points separate the top 3 teams. It looks as though the championship once again is going right down to the wire.